Lesson 7. Leading Change and Innovation. Change is everywhere. More than 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "Change is the only constant." The world we now live in has certainly proved him right. Change just may be the most powerful influence in the business world today. Just consider some of the changes we will encounter in the next decade. Almost half of all current knowledge will become obsolete. The pace of change will continue to accelerate. Entire industries will disappear. Organizations will continue to restructure to meet the changing demands of the marketplace. The lifespan of new products and new technologies will get shorter and shorter. Whether we like it or not, we work in a world of continuous change. Today's workplace has been described as permanent whitewater. Most organizations can no longer offer lifetime, long-term, or even secure employment. There is only one solution. If we are to successfully lead team members and our company to success, we must become masters of change and innovation. Overcoming resistance to change. When you attempt to help people change, it's critical to understand that first they must be willing to change. Otherwise, you are not really leading. You are using coercion or manipulation. Your team members should understand not only what they do, but why they do it. Once they understand the why, they will be much more likely to give wholehearted support and endorsement to your attempts to help them bring about particular changes. Obviously, you cannot demand that someone change. Change comes from internal understanding and acceptance. Changes that result from self-knowledge will be permanent because they are internalized, not temporarily adopted to please someone else. Your effectiveness as a leader depends upon your ability to lead people in gaining insight into the desirability of making changes in attitudes and behavior. One area that strongly affects the willingness of people to make personal changes is your attitude toward change. In fact, the single most important factor in the success of organizational change is the support, involvement, and commitment of leaders. If you find excitement in new experiences, new challenges, and new dimensions, and if you communicate your belief in the worth of continuous personal growth, your associates will want to grow too. If your behavior reflects enthusiasm, and if you find excitement in your own goal-seeking activities, you will attract followers. Some of your team members, however, will resist almost any change. There are at least 3 basic reasons why people resist change. 1. Fear. A basic fear of the unknown is a natural reaction that produces resistance to change. When we encounter an unfamiliar experience, we fear that we might prove incapable of performing effectively. However bad a present situation may be, it is familiar to us and we are comfortable with that familiarity. The fear of the unknown is why people insist they can't do something. It's why children declare they don't like a new food because they have never tasted it. We can tolerate changes if they do not disturb us personally or make it necessary to change our thinking or behavior. But even when we acknowledge that we might benefit from change, we usually think first of changing external circumstances, such as a job, a location, or the environment. 2. Indecision. People who have possessed particular attitudes for a long time cannot suddenly change those attitudes without admitting that they might have been wrong. We all experience the need to be right. It is vital to our self-esteem and self-confidence. Your team members, therefore, must be able to see that a new attitude is right, while at the same time accepting that the old attitude was not necessarily all wrong. An understanding of the philosophy of continuous growth and change supplies fulfillment of that need. Help your people accept the idea that change is inherent in nature itself, that it is a normal process of life. Once they accept the idea that change is inevitable, and sometimes even for the better, their resistance can be more easily overcome. They can accept the idea that what was right for them at one point in their life may not be right for them now. What was acceptable last year, or even last month, may no longer meet their changing needs. People continually change. They change in stature, in appearance, in experiences, in ideas, and in attitudes. To profit from the process of change, they must develop a personal development philosophy and commit to the virtue of making planned changes. 3. Lack of information. Most people fail to change simply because they have no idea what changes to make or how to initiate them. They need help in defining goals. Confusion about what goals to seek is not confined to any single organization. Small entrepreneurial companies and large multinational organizations alike may lack clear goals or a defined purpose. Only with clearly defined goals can real success be achieved. Remember that motivation is not the same as manipulation, and the purpose underlying your attempt to change attitudes and behavior must be a sincere desire to help people grow in accordance with their own best interests. If, for example, several of your people show a flair for leading others, help them plan to learn all the facets and appropriate attitudes of leadership. You will then help them qualify to become leaders in their own right. Most people want to discuss developing any talent and potential they obviously already have. You will be surprised at the amount of cooperation you receive just because you show an interest in team members and in their future. Leading the way for change. The only thing that never changes is the fact that everything constantly changes. Change is the natural state of all life. You cannot escape it. If nothing changed, leadership would be a simple process of developing smoothly working procedures and then sitting back to watch them operate. But since it is inevitable, every executive faces the challenge of dealing with change. Many people fear change and attempt to hang on to the status quo. The first task in leading change is to help team members overcome their underlying fear of change. 4 basic processes help overcome the fear of change. 1. Clear organizational goals. People fear change because its consequences are unknown. The present is familiar and comfortable. People know they can survive. But the prospect of succeeding in different, undefined circumstances is frightening. An organizational goals program defines the changes to be made, the direction they will take the organization, and the actions each person must take. Clear goals with specific individual responsibilities turn the threat of change into a challenge. 2. Personal development. A part of the leader's own business goals should be a plan for leading team members to set personal goals. Involve your team members in personal development, and they quickly realize that the best way to achieve their personal goals is to succeed in their work. An environment in which everyone is growing is a vital, exciting one. When team members grow personally, their positive attitudes and their enthusiasm and excitement about their work is contagious. They support one another, and you too. 3. Team involvement. Involve team members in the entire process of planning, tracking results, and providing feedback. People who know that they are part of the process feel a sense of ownership and commitment to the overall success of the organization. Involving them also gives you the benefit of their creativity, their insight into problems, and their intimate knowledge of the day-to-day mechanics of the organization. Participation in creating change eliminates the threat of change. 4. Safe learning environment. Could you walk along a narrow plank on the ground without fear of falling off? Would you feel just as confident if that plank were 20 meters above the ground? Team members who face change feel that they are walking a narrow plank high in the air. They are not sure whether they can stay on. Rather than risk failure, they choose not to attempt new behaviors. Provide a safe learning environment for team members. When you ask people to change, plan some provision for handling failed attempts, unexpected obstacles, or roadblocks. Safety nets can take many forms: additional reports and feedback, frequent problem-solving meetings by the entire team, or increased involvement by the top executive. New ideas and innovations can only happen if mistakes and failed attempts are not just tolerated but actually encouraged. Thomas Watson Sr., the founder of IBM, said, "If you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate." A safe learning environment is one based on encouragement and support rather than punishment. The psychology of change. The key to the future for both individuals and organizations will be learning how to better deal with change. To do this, it is imperative to understand the psychology of change. Whenever we encounter and go through change, we actually work through a series of identifiable steps or phases. Phase 1. Shock and denial. Our first reaction to most change is shock, followed by denial. This can take many forms. We deny the change is happening. We deny that the change means anything. We deny that the change applies to us. We deny that the change will last. In other words, we come up with many rationalizations on why we don't need to deal with this particular change. The key to dealing with denial is awareness. We must become aware of the need for a particular change. In other words, we must understand why the change is occurring, why it needs to occur, and what effect it will have. This is one of the reasons why so many organizations have difficulty changing. The top executives decide on a change, but they never let other people in the organization know the reason why the change was necessary. They simply tell people that they are going to change and that they want them to change too, but they don't explain the reasons for the change. Phase 2. Resistance and anger. Once there is an awareness of the need for change and the reasons for it, the next phase to overcome is resistance. This is where we fight against the change. Again, this can take many forms. We can refuse to go along with the change. We fight against the change. We look for someone or something to blame because of it. We sometimes even sabotage the change. We can withdraw and not show up. The response might be, they can't change us if we aren't there. Or, we can just pretend to change. Outright and open resistance is often easier to deal with than passive resistance. At least with open resistance, you know what you are dealing with, and you can confront it head-on. With passive resistance, it is difficult to challenge since there isn't any obvious resistance on the part of the individual. The solution to overcoming resistance to change is to focus on how it affects each person. The primary reason people resist change is that they don't know how the change is going to affect them personally. They may understand and accept the overall need for change, but they don't understand how it will affect their lives. This is a major reason why organizations fail to follow through with change. They explain how the change will affect the organization, but never explain how it will directly affect each person. Phase 3. Adaptation and acceptance. The next phase is where people begin to accept or adapt to the change. This is where you actually begin to experiment with the change. Focusing on the present instead of the past is critical when moving from resistance to acceptance. As long as you are focused on the past and the way things were always done, you are still in the resistance phase. You have progressed to the acceptance phase as soon as you start to focus on the future and the way things can be done. Moving through the adaptation-acceptance phase involves a series of small wins and requires ongoing support. As you adapt to the change and try new things, you will invariably make mistakes. If there isn't support and positive reinforcement as you are learning new ways of doing things, you will tend to revert back to old habits. Consequently, ongoing and visible support during adaptation is critical. Phase 4. Commitment and results. The final phase of change is where a person becomes committed to the change. At this point, the person has tried the change and has actually begun to master new and better approaches. It is not until a person has his or her own personal practical experience with the new methods that he or she will arrive at commitment. Commitment is not earned through simple mental understanding. It is only attained through actual physical experience. It is important for everyone who is affected by the change to actually be involved in the new process. Total commitment to the change is not attained with just the understanding that it will happen. It is only through belief, gained by experience, that a person is truly committed to the change. When a person has committed to the change, you must still continue to provide leadership and direction. Going through the 4 phases of change is not a singular event. This is an ongoing process that we constantly encounter. Consequently, we must learn to recognize the various stages of change and how to effectively manage them. It is only by mastering change that we can create for ourselves and our team members the future that we truly desire and deserve. Using innovation to succeed. Because we live in a world of constant change, organizations must continually change to meet the demands of the competitive marketplace. There seems to be no end to the stories of companies that failed to change and eventually went out of business. In today's business environment, continuous invention and innovation are no longer luxuries. They have become the vital key to survival and prosperity. Innovation is one of the few areas where organizations can achieve a significant competitive advantage. There are many factors that determine an organization's success at innovation. The goal of innovation is to constantly create new and better products and services that meet or create a need in the marketplace. Innovation is proactive change. Innovation means to think like an entrepreneur, always looking for new opportunities. It is no longer enough to have the best product or service today. You must also consistently innovate for tomorrow. Unfortunately, this is easier said than done. The larger and more successful an organization becomes, the more difficult it is to change and reinvent its products and services. In fact, the more successful an organization becomes at execution, the harder it becomes to innovate and change. Leaders must learn to challenge today's success in order to create tomorrow's opportunities. Creativity and innovation must become everyone's responsibility. Most new ideas and innovations are created from the interaction between team members and customers. Customers want solutions to their problems. They want their desires to be met and their needs fulfilled. These are all potential innovations. Leaders must have every team member actively searching for these opportunities, or they will pass right by the organization. Establishing and maintaining an innovative climate in the workplace requires sensitivity to individual differences when structuring work assignments. Because individuals' needs differ, how you lead people must differ. At the same time, the necessary procedures of your business must be met, and the difference in the way you lead particular individuals must avoid any appearance of preferential treatment. Give careful consideration to these factors. Structure and freedom. Some team members possess highly structured thinking patterns and want to work by the book. They want an explicit procedure to follow in every situation because this helps them feel secure. Give them training that enables them to do their jobs accurately and promptly, but do not burden them with the responsibility for making decisions in unpredictable situations. Other team members, in contrast, prefer to devise their own work plan. They want to feel that you consider their judgment dependable and that they are free to exercise initiative. Generally, the more freedom people have, the more creative and innovative they become. Their productivity and motivation are directly related to the degree of freedom and responsibility you grant them. Be sensitive to individual needs and assign responsibilities accordingly. Keep the goals of your organization firmly in sight, but give people as much freedom as they prove capable of handling. At the same time, require accountability. This approach empowers team members to increase their overall productivity and generate the greatest number of innovative ideas. Conformity and creativity. Encouraging team members to use as much of their creativity as possible, as long as their creativity is focused on productivity, is to your advantage. From their creativity come ideas for improving present products, services, and for implementing future projects. As a leader, your responsibility in encouraging creativity requires careful balance between inviting and directing creativity toward appropriate targets, while ensuring conformity in situations where no deviation can be tolerated. For example, the ethical policies of the organization are so vital to its existence that conformity must be maintained with no creative deviations allowed. Safety and quality control regulations must be the letter of the law. But experimentations and fresh ideas in many other areas are essential for continued profitability and competitiveness. The higher your expectations, the more creativity team members exhibit. High yet realistic expectations also increase the dignity and self-worth of those individuals who then find fulfillment in perceiving themselves as dynamic, creative contributors to the team. As the self-worth of team members grows, their motivation and ability to meet challenges improves. Leading innovation in your organization. Highly effective leadership is critical to successful innovation. Innovation will only occur if leaders actively pursue, support, encourage, and expect innovation from team members. To foster innovation in your organization, implement the following procedures. 1. Set challenging goals. Most organizations set incremental improvement goals to do a little better. These goals can usually be accomplished by doing more of the same thing or doing it only slightly better. To inspire innovation, set stretch goals that can only be achieved by doing things differently. 2. Create a sense of urgency. Urgency and need are the parents of invention. It's only when you urgently need to create something new that you start to look for different solutions. Set goals with target dates to build a sense of urgency. 3. Tear down barriers to communication. Innovation does not happen in isolation. Creative ideas are born and developed through interaction with others. Many of the best innovations are simply new ways to combine existing ideas. Create opportunities for people to interact with each other, especially across departments, divisions, and teams, even if it means interacting with each other at a distance. 4. Eliminate fear. Fear is the #1 enemy of innovation. Fear keeps people from trying new things or even suggesting new ideas. Build a climate of trust and support. Encourage different opinions. Actively seek out problems as they often contain the seed of a new opportunity. 5. Make everyone responsible for innovation. Ask team members how to improve or change the organization. Don't just ask once or twice, ask consistently. Eventually, team members will start to think creatively and look for potential innovations. Respond positively to all ideas, even if they aren't implemented. Give credit and recognition to team members for their creative thinking. When you communicate that you are willing to trust the judgment of team members and give them opportunities to exercise initiative, you motivate and empower them to seek innovative ideas and achieve higher and higher goals. Recognize team members for their successes and help them learn from their setbacks. Your job as a motivational leader is to create an environment where experimentation and trying new ways of doing things is supported, encouraged, and even expected. The future of your organization depends on the new ideas and creativity of team members.